Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to, well, cut through all the noise and give you the clearest insights we can find.
That's the plan.
And today, we are diving straight into something that really set the F1 world buzzing recently.
Oh, yeah.
The collision between Carlos Sainz and Oliver Bearman at Monza, the Italian Grand Prix. Bit of a flashpoint.
A big one. Yeah, definitely caused some ripples.
So our mission today really is to unpack it all, look at every angle, get into the rule book, and figure out what this whole thing tells us about, racing today.
Exactly. It's more than just cars touching, isn't it? It's a really interesting look at how these complex F1 rules get interpreted, how they're applied, and what that means for the drivers.
Yeah, we've looked at a lot of stuff, race analysis, what the driver said, expert takes.
We have, trying to piece together why it blew up the way it did. There are quite a few layers here.
Right, and maybe the loudest voice initially, the one that sparked a lot of the debate, was NICO Rosberg, actually.
Ah, yes. The former champ.
Yeah, you probably saw it. He was on a major sports broadcast, and he was pretty adamant. Said Sainz absolutely should have gotten a penalty for hitting Bearman.
Very direct, wasn't he? His point was basically that Bearman had, half a car length ahead?
That was his phrase.
And he was questioning why Sainz didn't just leave more space. Pretty clear stance from him.
And hearing that, your first reaction might be, okay, yeah, maybe he's right. Who do you lean towards?
Yeah.
Initially. It's easy to see Rosberg's point.
It is. But to really get to the bottom of it, we can't just go on gut feeling or even a champion's opinion. We have to look at the actual FIA rulebook.
That's the core of it, isn't it? What do the rules actually say?
Precisely. That's where we need to focus, especially the rules about overtaking, specifically overtaking on the outside. Rosberg's passion is one thing, but the specific wording in the regulations is another.
Okay, so let's get into that. What are the rules for attacking someone on the outside? Because that's exactly what Sainz was doing.
Right. So the FIA lays out three main things the attacking car has to do, or criteria it has to meet, for an outside overtake.
Three things.
First, the attacker's front axle. It needs to be ahead of the other car's front axle, right at the apex of the corner.
Front axle ahead at the apex. Got it. What's second?
Second is controlled driving. The driver has to be in control on the way in, right at the apex, and crucially on the way out as well.
Control through the whole phase.
Okay.
And third?
Third, they have to be able to make the turn and stay within the track limits. The white lines.
Right. Makes sense. Front axle control, stay on track. So those are the rules. Now, applying that to Sainz, did the analysis show he actually met all three? Was it clear?
Well, yeah. When you look closely at the telemetry, the onboard footage, it actually becomes pretty clear that Sainz ticked all those boxes.
Okay, let's break it down. First one, front axle ahead at the apex. You said the data supports this.
Definitely. It wasn't even borderline, really. Sainz got his front axle ahead of Bearman's right from when he started braking. It wasn't some last-second dive. He established that position quite early in the braking zone.
Okay, clear on point one. What about point two, controlled driving? Entry, apex, exit.
Again, the analysis suggests he was perfectly in control. He didn't lock up, didn't wash out wide. He just about kissed the apex, and importantly, he did actually leave a bit of space for Bearman on the inside.
Ah, so he wasn't squeezing him completely off.
No, there was space.
Yeah.
And there wasn't any, aggressive swerve under braking or anything like that. Looked like he could have made the corner fine on his own.
And the last one, track limits. Did he stay within the lines, even with the contact happening?
He did, yep. The data shows he kept it within the track limits throughout. So the really interesting thing here is, despite all the noise, when you just look at the written rules, Sainz didn't actually seem to do anything wrong according to those regulations. Based purely on that, a penalty wouldn't have been justified.
Okay, so the rulebook seems to clear him. But as often happens, not everyone saw it that way. You mentioned Jamie Chadwick had a different take.
That's right. She offered a different viewpoint, suggesting maybe Bearman shouldn't have gotten that 10-second penalty, and even hinted that Carlos could have perhaps done more to avoid it.
Which raises that fundamental question, doesn't it? If you've clearly lost the position going into a corner, whose job is it primarily to back out and avoid contact?
And the source material we looked at argues pretty strongly that the onus should have been on Bearman there, because he was the one who'd essentially lost the corner in the braking phase.
And, we don't even have to guess how that situation could have played out differently. We saw an almost identical scenario just a few laps later.
I did. Yeah. Same chicane, turn 4. It involved Alex Albon and Kimi Antonelli. And it's incredibly insightful to compare them.
How did that one go down?
Well, Antonelli was in a similar position to Berman, being overtaken on the outside by Albon. But Antonelli reacted completely differently. He clearly saw he'd lost the position, and he backed out of it significantly. The data shows he was almost 30 kilometers per hour slower on his approach that lap compared to the previous one. He braked much earlier. It was a clear signal. Okay, the corner's yours.
So he just conceded it, lifted, braked earlier, let Albon go through cleanly.
Exactly. And guess what? No collision. It's almost a textbook example of how Berman could have handled it. It shows the alternative, the way to keep racing without ending up tangled together.
That's a really powerful comparison.
Yeah.
And was there anything different in the way Sainz and Albon took their lines in those overtakes?
There was, actually. A subtle but telling difference. Sainz, when he overtook Berman, he didn't really bite the curb on the inside apex. Like we said, he left that bit of space.
Okay.
Albon, however, when he passed Antonelli, he took what you'd call the more classic ideal racing line. He did use the inside curb.
So, if anything, Albon's move was geometrically more aggressive, taking the optimal line.
You could argue that, yeah.
Yeah.
Which kind of underlines the point that Sainz wasn't being overly forceful or trying to initiate contact. He was entitled to the line by the rules, aiming for a good exit, and still left a gap. Berman just, well, he didn't take the exit ramp, so to speak.
Which brings us to what Berman did do. Some described it as a kind of apex trap. What does that mean?
Yeah, that was an interesting description. The idea is that Berman braked a bit earlier than Sainz initially, which you might expect if you're defending. But then apparently he briefly lifted off the brake pedal.
Lifted off? Why?
To momentarily get back alongside Sainz right at the apex, almost like trying to game that front axle at the apex rule, perhaps. Trying to make it look like he still had a claim to the corner.
Ah, I see. So use the rules, even if you'd effectively already lost the position going in.
That seems to be the interpretation. But the problem was he was trying to hold a line and carry a speed that just wasn't really feasible given where Sainz was and the line he was taking. He was trying to occupy space he'd already conceded entry to.
And that's why the contact happened. Because he persisted rather than conceding like Antonelli.
Precisely. He kept trying to hold on to something that was already gone instead of adjusting like Antonelli did just a bit later.
And, you know, this turn 4 at Monza, it's seen similar things before, right? There's a bit of history there with penalizing drivers on the inside trying to hang on too long.
There is. You have to go back to 2021, I think it was. Nikita Mazepin on the inside, Mick Schumacher overtaking him on the outside, same corner.
What happened there?
Mazepin got a 5-second penalty because he basically tried to squeeze Schumacher into a gap that wasn't really there anymore. He'd lost the position.
So a clear precedent for penalizing the inside car for not yielding when the overtake is effectively complete according to the rules.
Exactly. And that Mazepin incident really shores up the steward's decision against Berman. If anything, Berman's 10 seconds reflects maybe stricter standards now compared to Mazepin's 5 seconds back then.
And what did the drivers say afterwards? Did they shed any light?
Well, Berman, to his credit, said he needed to look at it again without emotion, which is fair enough. Sainz was quite clear, though. He said he left a car's width, and Berman chose not to lift. Pretty straightforward from his perspective.
Okay, so the rules seem clear. The precedent is there. Why then, especially maybe in the UK, was there such a strong reaction against the penalty for Berman, if it seemed justified by the book?
That's a really good question, and I think the answer might be less about this specific incident in isolation and more about the bigger picture for Berman.
How so?
Because that 10-second penalty also came with 2 penalty points on his license, and that put him on 10 points in total.
And 12 points means?
A race ban. So suddenly he was just 2 points away from being forced to sit out a race. And that understandably caused quite a bit of alarm and maybe amplified the criticism of this particular penalty.
Ah, okay. That context is crucial. It wasn't just the Monza incident. It was the cumulative effect.
Yeah.
What were the other points for?
Let's see. He got 2 points back in Brazil in November 24 for a collision. Then 2 more in Monaco, May 25. That was for overtaking under a red flag in practice. And then a big chunk, 4 points in Great Britain in July 25, again for a collision, also under a red flag in practice.
Wait, so 6 of his 10 points were for incidents under red flags in practice?
That's right. 6 points totally unrelated to racing incidents like the one with Sainz. But they all add up, so the Monza penalty suddenly put him right on the edge of that ban threshold, which definitely fueled the fire around the discussion.
Now, here's where it gets maybe a bit ironic, circling back to ROSBERG'S initial strong criticism of Sainz.
Uh-oh. Where are you going with this?
Well, you remember the 2016 Austrian Grand Prix? Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton?
Vaguely. The infamous clap.
Exactly. Rosberg was defending the inside line, but he turned in super late, something like 20 meters past the actual apex, and ended up colliding with Hamilton. And he got a 10-second penalty for that.
Oh, right. I remember now. Yeah, he basically missed the corner trying to defend.
So it's just, a little interesting that someone who was penalized for defending perhaps too aggressively by running way past the apex is now so critical of Sainz, who, by the rules, seem to have the corner secured from the outside. Maybe a slight difference in perspective depending on which car you're in.
It certainly adds another layer, doesn't it? It raises that question about consistency in how drivers, even former drivers, view these things. And, stepping back from individuals, Carlos Sainz himself has actually said publicly that he thinks F1 driving standards overall need to change.
That's quite a statement from a current top driver. What's the issue he and maybe others see with the current rules around, controlling your line and making overtakes?
I think the dilemma boils down to the interpretation. Does that front axle at apex rule maybe incentivize overly aggressive braking, knowing you're sort of safe once you hit that marker, even if your control is marginal?
Right, like it protects the attacker almost too much.
Potentially. And what does in control truly mean when drivers are pushing right to the limit? Maybe changing their line subtly to force the issue. The rules, as they are, can sometimes feel like they leave the inside driver totally disarmed. Even if they try something, maybe a bit cheeky, like BEARMAN'S brake lift, they have to yield if the outside car meets those 3 technical points.
So the driver making the bolder, maybe riskier outside move, gets the benefit of the doubt by the letter of the law, leaving the inside car nowhere to go but back out or crash.
Oh, that's the perception sometimes. And it leads to calls for maybe simpler rules, like going back to a more straightforward, always leave a car's width if there's significant overlap, maybe defining overlap as front wing next to rear wheel, something like that.
Instead of just the precise front axle position at one exact point.
Exactly, because the current complexity can create these situations that just feel, well, a bit absurd sometimes. Drivers get penalized when maybe they shouldn't, or avoid penalties for moves that cause contact because of a technicality. It really makes you ask, do these rules actually promote the best kind of racing, or have they gotten a bit tangled up?
It's a huge debate. But, shifting gears slightly, that collision wasn't the only headache for Sainz at Monza, was it? Strategically, things didn't exactly go his way either.
No, they absolutely did not. Monza turned out to be a really tough weekend for him on multiple fronts. Strategically, he was kind of behind the 8 ball from the start.
How so?
Well, he was the last driver in the top 13 to choose to start on the medium compound tires. Everyone else up there, or most of them, went for the hards.
And the hards turned out to be the better race tire that day.
Significantly better, yeah. As the race went on, it became clear the hard tire had much better durability and pace over the long run.
So what was the winning strategy then if you started on hards?
It was all about the overcut. The drivers on hards could just hang back behind the medium runners initially. Then, when the medium guys pitted relatively early, the hard tire cars could stay out, running clean air, and pump in fast laps on those durable tires.
Gaining loads of time before their own pit stop.
Exactly. They'd build up a big enough gap to pit later and still come out ahead, switching to the faster mediums for the end of the race. That was the overcut.
And we saw Albon nail this strategy, right?
Perfectly. Albon used that overcut brilliantly. But Sainz, well, he was sort of the sacrificial lamb for the team strategy.
How do you mean?
By starting Sainz on mediums, the team covered their bases, split the strategies, but it meant Sainz was on the wrong tire early on, which directly helped Albon execute his overcut successfully, while Sainz's own race was compromised from the get-go.
Ouch. So being a team player really cost him personally in that race.
It seems that way. And then, to add a little salt to the wound, later in the race, Sainz actually asked Albon over the radio for a bit of DRS help. Let him get close enough to get the speed boost on the straight. He even reminded Albon he'd done the same for him in a previous race.
And did Albon return the favor?
Nope. Radio silence, basically. Albon just carried on, focused on his own race, which, is his right, but it just capped off a really difficult day for Sainz.
Wow. Yeah, between the collision, the penalty points controversy for BEARMAN, the strategy not working out, and no help from Albon. You can see why people say it was just a terrible weekend for him. Almost feels like he needs an exorcism sometimes, a bit like Fernando Alonso's luck.
It really does feel like that sometimes in F1, doesn't it? Where everything that can go wrong does go wrong for a particular driver on a given weekend.
So let's try and wrap this Monza mayhem up. Key takeaways. Sainz looks like he was technically in the clear according to the FIA's outside overtake rules.
Based on the letter of the law, yes.
Bearman's penalty, while maybe harsh feeling to some, seems justified by those rules, backed up by the Mazepin precedent, and the reaction was definitely amplified by his precarious penalty point situation.
Absolutely. The points context is key.
And the whole thing just throws a spotlight on this bigger ongoing argument about driving standards in F1 and whether the rules are achieving the right balance.
Which leaves us with a final thought, really, for you listening. When you think about these incredibly fast, high-stakes racing incidents and the detailed, sometimes confusing rule book, how can F1 find that perfect balance? How do you encourage hard, exciting racing, but still have rules that are clear, consistently applied, and fair to everyone?
Is it even possible to simplify things without maybe losing some of the edge, the challenge that makes F1 so compelling?
That is the multi-million-dollar question, isn't it? Something for everyone to ponder.
Definitely food for thought.
Uh-huh.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Monza incident. Hopefully it's given you a clearer picture, maybe some new perspectives.
Hope so.
Until next time, keep digging.